Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scot McKay. You can find me on X, on Truth Social, on TikTok, and on YouTube at Scot McKay, and on Instagram and Threads at Real Scot McKay. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com. And gentlemen, if you are not a part of our Facebook group, you are cordially invited. That's the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. I'm excited about not only the topic of this show, but especially the guest. My first-time guest is a mentalist. He calls himself a mind power expert. His brand is the Mastermind, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of talk about masterminding with others. This guy is quite literally a master of the mind. He comes from Palm Springs, California, and his name is Brent Webb. Brent, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Today, we're going to talk about the topic of the voice in your head. And before we elaborate on what that means, because I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it, I want to give these guys a little bit of a background about you. You perform all over the world. You perform for U.S. presidents with A-list celebrities. You do stage shows. You just came back from working on a cruise ship and doing presentations for them, which is a pretty cool gig if you can get it, I'm sure. And what you do is you blow people's minds by demonstrating the power of the mind. So first of all, Brent, tell us what goes on in your shows. You wouldn't really refer to yourself as a magician, right? It's something completely different that you do.
Yeah, I mean, I started out as a magician, a little kid magician. Well, when I was an only child in Ohio, little chubby kid. And actually, what happened? I used to go to the library every week and get magic books. And so one week I got somebody had placed on the shelf a book called The Magic of Believing. And obviously wasn't a magic trick book. It was all about the power of the mind. So at 10 years old, I got that book and I realized, wow, there's really something more than I ever thought. And I kind of put it in the back of my mind. So I went out when I was 19 on the road, started working with celebrities. And I do a big stage show, like a mind reading stage show. And I used to think I was really, just really cool doing that. And I did a meditation retreat about 15 years ago in Nepal. And the monk he asked me, what do you do? And I said, I'm a mentalist. I can read minds. And he said, think of any word. And I did. And he said, lumberjack. And that was it. And from that point, I have kind of moved away from entertainment and more into motivation, empowering people, because really it changed everything for me. Somebody was doing for real what I was pretending to do my whole life. So it just changed everything. He explained to me about, universal consciousness. We'll get into that other things, but I still do shows. I do, Vegas and cruise ships. Like you said, I'm going to London next week, but I try to mix motivation and the tools that people need because we're living inside our minds pretty much, basically what we're doing. So it's giving people the tools they need to take control. Some of us for the first time and start making real change in our life.
All right. Well, that's pretty heavy duty, what you just talked about. I mean, there are a lot of self-help gurus out there who will talk very glibly about taking control of your mind and being resilient and stop being a victim. I'm raising my own hand, by the way. I'm all for all that stuff. But going to Nepal and having a monk say, what word are you thinking of? And him just coming up with it is a whole nother level. I mean, how did he do that? And what does he know that you now know that we don't about that kind of mind power?
Well, there is universal consciousness, which people don't understand. Everyone is connected to that. And when we're born, I mean, we're blank slates. And as children, think about it. When you're happy, you're laughing. When you're sad, you're crying. It's you living in the moment. It's real. Then we start getting programmed by our parents and siblings and teachers and media and government. That's all programming, not always in a Dr. Evil take over the world kind of way. It's just generational programming. But as we become adults, we've got that old tape running inside our mind. And we build this layer of ego. We create a false version of ourselves. And what happens is by throwing all the things that bother us and scares us and makes us happy and sad, it blocks that flow. It blocks that connection. So what a monk, especially somebody who meditates 12 hours a day, I mean, their whole life is that, but that can make that connection. He said, mind reading it's not an impossibility, because if you can connect to universal consciousness, you're connected to everyone's consciousness, was his explanation. And it just opened my eyes to things that the idea of energy and how we have, we have this life force inside us. So it just moved what I was doing with my career, with my life. It just changed everything for me, because I started doing it myself and started meditating and doing things. But then I really kind of broke it down into very simple steps and started teaching people. And I'm not, there's a lot of people selling courses and retreats, and that's not really what I do. I just want to tell people they have this ability. It's in you. You were born with it. You have the most sophisticated supercomputer ever devised inside you. Nobody knows how to use it. It's like you buy a cell phone, you buy a toaster, you buy a microwave, they give you a manual that tells you exactly how to operate it. You're born with this thing, and they say, hey, learn it. It's all up to you. It's like teachers used to tell me, you need to focus. And finally I said, how do you do that? I never learned how to focus. And she admitted she didn't really know. And it's true. I mean, focus, they tell you to focus, but how do you focus? And when you start working inside instead of outside, which is what we're all doing, we're looking for something out there, the job will make me happy. When I get the car, it'll make me happy. When I get the woman, it'll make me happy. And really, happiness is an inner thing. So I learned those things and then started putting them into my life and really saw some amazing changes. So I've really just been so excited these last, 15, 20 years teaching people how to do it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So it's a great gig. It sounds like you're making the world a better place. I would say, Brent, a lot of these guys are going to want to put practicals behind these concepts sooner than later, if we can, in this show. You talk about how participants in your seminars learn how to detect when someone is lying. That's like FBI interrogator stuff, right? How to improve memory and focus, which you've already alluded to. How people use your own brain against you, which I would assume has something to do with manipulative tactics that, the big buzzword nowadays is narcissists, what people like that would use, and stuff like that. And what you say is you have mind hacks that the guys listening, and indeed me too, I can't wait, can start using today that'll change the way we see the world and allow us to tap into our subconscious minds, like you've been talking about already, to enhance creativity and decision-making and stuff like that. You have a principle, I guess a set of principles, right, called the ABCs. And I know you want to talk about that. Go for it.
Well, I think it's important because until you get control of your mind, you can't make those kind of changes. You can't start detecting when someone's lying. You can't stop other people from using your mind against you. When you control your mind, it's impossible for anybody else to use it. And it's not just in an evil way like you were alluding to. It's also marketing. It's advertising. I mean, that is all manipulating you as well. So yeah, the ABCs of mind power, I've kind of boiled it down to 3 very easy concepts, and they build on each other, which is what makes it so great. But the first thing you have to do is you have to realize, look, I'm programmed. And it's difficult for people to admit to that. But as you're listening to this today, 99.9% of you are programmed. And it only makes sense. I mean, from the moment you're born, we're blank slates. Then we start to get programmed by the people around us, parents and all of that, like I said. So what happens is now you're an adult and you've got a lot of rusty, old, outdated programming in your mind. The thing is, that program runs in your mind in the background anytime you're on autopilot. Okay? You're on autopilot about 90% of the day. So if you think about that, it's terrifying because it means you're being controlled by a program that is no longer logical. It wasn't made when you were mature. You made it when you were a kid, under 8 or under. Those are the years when your ego is created. So whatever's going on in your life is what is controlling you now as an adult. So I tell people the ABCs of mind power. The first thing is the A, of course, is awareness. Because you have to know what that voice is saying inside your mind. Most of the time it's running in the background. You're going throughout your day, and that voice is ruining your life because it's constantly pulling your attention away, pulling your consciousness away, and pulling you into things, dramas and fights and worries about the past and the future. And you have to figure out what is on my mind. So what I tell people is, The first thing, and we're talking about mind hacks. I've been doing this for years. It's a great mind hack, very easy. There's a voice inside your head. All of us have one. Actually, there's two. There's the voice that you can make talk. So if you're trying to think of something from your past, you're doing some kind of mathematics, you can conjure up the voice. But then there's the voice that just starts talking, the voice that's narrating your life. I call it the bitchy roommate. You're trapped in a room with someone and they're narrating your life, and it's almost completely negative. So it's the voice that you're driving down the road and all of a sudden says, remember the birthday party when you were 7 and you peed your pants and everyone laughed at you? That voice that seems like it serves no purpose. And all of a sudden, what happens when that voice says that? All of the emotion and the feelings from that time come right back. You get flushed in your face. You feel embarrassed, exactly like you did when you stored it away, because that's what we do. So you have to understand this. We take everything that ever bothered us, and you would think logically, if something bothered you and you didn't like it, you would get rid of it. That's not what we do. We store it inside. And then the next time anything triggers it, it comes rushing back up with the same emotion, all the same emotions that you stored with it. So if you've stored everything in your life that makes you uncomfortable, that makes you upset, it's not hard to figure out why we're upset and uncomfortable, because those things are constantly resurfacing. It's like when someone says, don't go there with me. It means you're getting close to some of that stuff. If someone says, we can't talk about that with your father, that means dad has some stuff. So you name the voice in your head, that voice that just triggers out of nowhere. I named mine Carl a long time ago. And the reason for that is it sounds so stupid, but it's really a genius idea, because a lot of people, they hear this voice and it just pulls them right in. They think it's the voice of God. It's the voice of the future. It's the voice of something that knows something. And it doesn't. It's just old rusty programming. So when that voice comes up, it really can't do you any good. Again, it's not intuition. It's not the voice that you get when you're inspired or that sort of thing. It's the old, you're not good enough. You are, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too stupid. People like us, can't have money, whatever that is. That's the programming that runs in your mind. So you name the voice in your head. When that voice starts, you just look at it and you say, wow, there goes Carl again. And you look at the voice like a petulant child. It's a kid not getting his way. It's a little tiny kid who's, fighting back. And it takes all of the sting away. It takes all the power away, because it's no longer this booming voice of the future. It's just programming. It's just a little boy or girl that's trapped in there. And again, it's the way you're looking at it is going to start to give you some space. It's going to start to create, now you're starting to realize what's on your mind. What is the voice? What is the voice saying? And the next part of that, I tell people, you've named the voice, you've given it a name, you get some Post-it notes, maybe 20 Post-it notes, and just do this for a week. That's all you got to do. You get some Post-it notes, you write the name of the voice. So in my case, Carl, on all the Post-it notes, you place them around the house, the car, the office, wherever you go for a week, and you just get a little pad and a pen and keep it with you. And for the next 7 days, every time you see a Post-it note, it's your trigger. Stop. What's on my mind right now? You write it down. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start to realize this thing that's running in the background, you're now able to get at least the last part of it, because you're stopping immediately. What's on my mind? Write it down. You do that for 7 days. At the end of 7 days, you are going to look at that notebook and you're going to see the most screwed up bunch of crap that you've ever read in your life, because it's not logical and you weren't mature when you made it, and it starts to lose its grip. It's like anything big and scary that you drag into the light, it starts to lose its power. And it's very, very easy. Like I said, you just name it. And then you do the Post-it notes for 7 days. After 7 days, you're going to keep the name for it, but you're going to know what it's, the kind of things it's saying, what's happening, and it's going to start to lose its grip.
Naming it Carl sounds so Marxist.
Right. I didn't know that at the time, because
what a fascist dictator this voice in your head is.
Well, that's really what it is. I mean, think about it. If you had a real roommate that talked to you the way that voice talks to you, how long would you stay in that house?
Oh, you'd bitch slap them.
Right. It is. And it, not only that, it will give you advice. And then if something happens to prove that advice is wrong, it will totally do a 360 and give you the opposite advice. I mean, it doesn't know what it's talking about, because it's like you have a computer, right? That's blank, and you start adding, your likes, your dislikes, things that scared you, things that bother you over time. Now, when you're trying to make a decision, How are you getting, what is the computer? It's everything you've put in from the past. You can only get an answer from whatever you've programmed it with, which is your past. That's why it's like you're driving down the highway and you're in a car that you've never washed for, your entire life. And you're sitting in the driver's seat looking through the windshield, and there's layer after layer after layer of gunk. That's the past. You're not seeing the road. You're not seeing reality like it really is. You're seeing it through the lens of your past. And until you realize that you're making decisions, life decisions, huge decisions from this place, you can't make any real change. So that starts to give you some space. Next time you get somebody with drama that starts to pull you in, you'll start to realize, wow, there's space here that was never here before. Normally I get sucked into the conversation, and it could be an hour or a week before I realize, wow, I've been unconscious. So now it starts to give you it's like being in the zone. Things slow down a little bit and you see, wow, is this worth my peace? And of course it's not. Because we just have let that program run us for so long. It's like having a gorilla up there in a cage, and it's going crazy and throwing crap everywhere. And you are lying down next to it because you think that thing is in control, and you're not.
Based on everything you said so far, Brent, I can only imagine a lot of these guys out there are going to name this inner voice after their ex-wife.
Yeah. I mean, but if you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to start bringing the emotion you had with the ex-wife.
It's going to be a trigger. Yeah.
Right.
Bad idea.
You want to figure out what you created when you were a kid and why it's controlling your life now. And that's what you're going to see, because nobody looks at this. I mean, we have lives now where we have a 7-second attention span. It used to be less. Or less. It used to be 7 minutes in the 80s, late 80s. So everything's on your phone. Like when you're scrolling, you have to stop within 7 seconds. There's bright colors. There's lots of movement. They're trying to get your attention. So it's very difficult to figure out what's going on because your attention is constantly pulled from one thing to the next. So this allows you to start creating space, like I said, to figure out what's going on up there. And then you can move into the B and the C. But you really have to become aware. You've created this voice. It's just what you like, what you don't like. I mean, think about it. As kids, anything that scared you is stored in there. If you were afraid, if you saw a snake when you were 4 years old and it really scared you, well, that snake is not gone. It's still there. It's living inside you. Now, nobody can talk about snakes. You can't watch a movie that has snakes in it. You can't walk down the road and see a coiled up rope because you might think it's a snake. I mean, it controls your whole life. That's one thing. We do it with everything.
That's so true.
Everything.
Yeah. Everything. And that's a rather voluminous task to try to clear out all of that noise and all of that bad programming. But the more you do to accomplish that goal, the clearer your head's going to be. And I guess just like you've just said, the more aware you are. I think that all of what you just said only makes perfect sense. So what's the B?
Well, once you've done the A and you start to become aware, and most people for the very first time, they're aware of what that voice is saying. The B is belief, because belief is paramount and belief is so important. Self-belief, without it, you're not going to accomplish anything. And probably as well as I do, we know some people that have not a lot of talent, but an overabundance of self-belief. They are usually more successful than the person that has a lot of talent and no self-belief. Because self-belief, without it, no one else is gonna think that you can do anything if you can't. So the belief starts to come automatically. If you've never had it before or you've had low self-esteem, once you start becoming aware, it's almost laughable. You see the kind of outdated crap that your mind is saying, and it starts to lose its power on you, and the belief starts to be created automatically. I can get out of this. I do deserve that. Because that's really, we're talking ourselves out of so much by saying, I don't deserve that, or I'm not the kind of person that can have that, or that's what we do. We talk to that voice like it's a person. We literally let it control the conversation. We literally talk to it. And I know people that they'll be in their car driving, and they'll be, they had a fight with their wife in the morning. So they're going home to have another fight with the woman, right? So they're in their head having an entire conversation. I'm going to tell her this, and then she's going to say this. And then they're literally doing both sides of an imaginary conversation because the voice started that.
Or even an argument.
Yeah. You've been pulled down the rabbit hole into something that's never going to happen. Not like you think it is. And so we spend 40% of our day in the past and 40% of our day in the future. The past is, I wish I could have done that. If I hadn't done this, he wouldn't have left. If she hadn't done that, we're playing that game 40% of the day. 40% of the day, we're in the future thinking about all the things we don't want to happen or worrying about something. And that leaves us 20% of the time to be in the now. And that's the moment. I mean, really, the only moment that matters is this one. Because when the past was happening, it was in the moment. It was now. When the future gets here, it will be now. So the past and the future are abstract concepts. The now is the moment, but nobody wants this moment. It's like you're making a cup of coffee. You don't want the moment where you're making it. You want the moment where you're drinking it. You're a teenager and it's Wednesday. No, you want Friday. You're going on vacation next week and you don't want this week. You want to get to next Monday so you can start your vacation. That's what we do constantly. It's like happiness is always ahead of us.
We just wish our lives away.
Right. Constantly. And so, because we're never taking ownership of, look, the voice in the mind is my creation. What it's saying is things programmed into it from the past. It's no longer logical. I'm going to take back this control, because right now you're living in a program and you're confined by the walls of your mind.
You know, a couple of the things you're saying are concepts that I've championed for years. We do have a lot of guys who are very high IQ who listen to this show. And I find that they fall into the trap of what I'm going to term the if-then loop that you just talked about, almost by default. I mean, I start overanalyzing everything into logical oblivion, and it never is a positive ideation. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm doomed, right? If I talk to this woman, she's going to look at me like I'm an idiot. I'm going to trip all over myself. I'm going to totally freeze, not know what I'm going to say. Then she's going to laugh at me. Then my friends are going to laugh at me. Then I'm going to be humiliated, and it's going to make me never want to talk to a woman ever again. And next thing you know, 4 or 5 thoughts later, he's dying alone. I mean, we do this to ourselves. I mean, you're onto something there. The other thing I want to add is you're talking about belief. And I tie that to confidence. You know, that would make it ACC, which sounds like, you know, NCAA basketball instead of, you know, something convenient and easy to remember like ABC. But belief in your own competence, your own ability to perform, your own ability to get the job done, that you can do this, you got this, is what you're talking about. Brent, I have said for years, the number one differentiator between men who get the girl and are, well, for lack of a better way to put it, good with women, is they believe they should be good with women. They believe women should be attracted to them. That is number one. Everything else is in the rearview mirror, second, third, fourth place. Every guy I've ever known, regardless of his looks, however he's won the genetic lottery, how much money he makes, et cetera, if he believes women should want him, women will go, all right, well, you know what? This guy seems to believe that he's good with women. All right, he must be good with women. I'll go out with him. There really is something to what you're talking about here.
Of course. And it's not just with the opposite sex. It's with everything. I mean,
job,
everything.
Social.
Because if you've seen people walk into a room and exactly like you're saying, they might not be it doesn't always have to be the most attractive man. It doesn't have to be the smartest, the richest, but you see somebody walk in a room, they're just magnetic because they have that self-belief. They have that self-confidence. And if you just have that, you know, you can still make it. But if you have that and some of the other things, and you're good at your job, and it's gonna push you even farther ahead, because it's just, you've got a key in your pocket, you're in prison, and the key's been there all along. You can let yourself out at any time. You just don't do it. We just don't know.
Slippers.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. And that's just the way it is. They don't teach it in school. There are so many things. I mean, think about it. School is made to, you know, build people to work in the machine. It's not teaching you how to be an entrepreneur. It's not teaching you how to do anything like financial, even balance a checkbook normally. It definitely doesn't tell you how to take control of your mind. And these are things, if you learn young, we would not be in the situations that we're in, because you wouldn't allow your mind to create this. You've created this monster, and you can't blame anybody else.
It's so true that the education system is designed to create worker bees. It's all indoctrination, really.
Yeah, they beat it out of you. I mean, not literally, but it's like, you know, get in the desks, everybody dress the same, everybody be the same, get in the, you know, it's
color inside the lines.
Right. It's when you were kids, everything's amazing, and then it all starts to go away. And then as adults now, it's really your responsibility. If you can't blame anybody else, no matter what happened in your childhood, there comes a point when my mother and father divorced. That was 40 years ago, and mom's dead now. That should not hold power over you. But see, it does, even though you don't realize it because it's running in the background. Those big moments in childhood still have tremendous power over you. And there's got to be a certain point where you have to let it go for you, not for anybody else. It's just for you because you're living. It's like an episode of Hoarders. Remember the show Hoarders where everybody throws crap in their house? That's what you're doing. You've taken everything that ever offended you, made you mad, upset you, made you cry, scared you, and you've stored it away. And now anytime it triggers, it comes pouring back. And we have 50,000 thoughts a day. So when I tell people you've got to watch your thoughts, because there's 50,000 thoughts a day, 90% of those thoughts are negative. And they're negative. They're almost all negative because it's usually I want something or I want to make sure I don't get something something I don't want that I really want to make sure it doesn't happen to me. And that's how everything fits into those two things in our entire life. If you think about it, that's really what it is. So instead of just accepting the way things are, then changing it, it's like you automatically rebel against life, against the universe, against God, whatever, because life is billions and billions of years to get to this moment, right? We think this moment has to do with us. Think about it. You're on a rock hurtling through outer space right now. And what are you doing? You're worried about what Mary thinks. You're worried about the ketchup stain you got on your pants at lunch. You're worried about what the neighbors think of your car. That's what we're doing. Flying through outer space on a rock, right? And it's like, it's crazy. But if you look at the big picture, that's what's happening. And we're living in our mind. Everything we think, everything has to do with us, how it affects us and what's going on in our life. So that's very small. That's playing very small because you're unable to really see the big picture. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing it through the lens of your past always. So because you have 50,000 thoughts a day, 90% of them are negative because they're negative again, because there's the things you don't want. Then there's the things you want. And if you get those things, then you have to be able to keep them. You have to be, you're always worried about that. That can become a negative. So there's a lot of negativity going on, 50,000 thoughts a day, but the thoughts that matter, the thoughts that you need to get control of aren't those random thoughts. They're not the lines on the road thoughts, I like to say. You're driving down the road, there's white lines. Who's paying any attention to that? There's lots of stuff going on, trees and things passing you. You're not paying attention to that. It's the things that you have connected emotion to. So usually from childhood. So it's the thought pattern, like I'm not good enough, or something happened. Like I said, you get embarrassed at a party when you're a kid. You take all of the thoughts, all of the emotions, store them together, push them down. Now, when they come back, because they're trying to release, everything is energy in the universe. You, me, the walls around us, nothing. If you look at it under, high powered microscopes, it's not solid. It's energy. So emotions, thoughts, that's all energy too. You're storing it inside, and it's like a river and a dam. The river always wants to run. It always wants to push through that dam. So every day that river's trying to push through. Same thing's happening. Those thoughts and emotions are trying to get out. They're coming back up because they want to go. And what do? Nope, push them right back down. You break up with your girlfriend. She drives a red pickup truck. Every time you see a red pickup truck, what happens? Your stomach gets upset. You start to get hot, right? Think about it. And it's ridiculous. It's something that happened 10 years ago. But not for you. It's happening to you right now. You store everything that upsets you, and the good things too. But guess how many good things? I'm 49 years old. In my life, most people have probably 25, 30 really good positive moments, like the first kiss with somebody you were just, you had the biggest crush on, right? Or the first new car, or your wedding day, or the birth of your, there's certain things. But 20 or 30, guess how many negative things you've stored in there? Yeah. Probably 50,000, because everything, your likes, your dislikes. Think about this. I like that. I don't like this. I like her. I don't like. You label everything. This person's in your mind, this person's a drunk. You met somebody one time, they were drunk, right? Maybe they never drank. Their dad died the night before and they drank that day and you saw them drunk. But in your mind now, they're the drunk. She's the bitch. He's the this. That's what we do. We label everything. So again, you're not seeing reality. You're seeing a pine tree is individual and different. And no, it's pine trees. That's all the trees are the same. That's what we do. So to try to make this life easier, we're trying to, we label things. We move things around.
When Twitter started, it's amazing how people adopted the habit so easily. I mean, it was like a hot knife through butter of categorizing and judging people based on one 140 character tweet. I've got this guy's entire life, his goodness, his badness, all figured out because I either liked or didn't like what he said with 140 characters. It's just crazy. There's junk in the trunk, and then there's junk in the mind. And, what you're doing here is helping us really clear out all the junk in our mind. One of the breakthroughs I've had personally from everything you've said so far, Brent, is, again, for ages, I've told people that if they're letting someone who hurt them in the past still control their thoughts and even their actions, or if someone broke up with them or sexually assaulted them, and it's years later and they still can't have a healthy relationship, or they're still bitter and angry towards the entire other gender, what they're doing is they're granting this person, this bad person, superpowers over their life, and they're the last person who deserve that. And Brent, I've seen people transformed just by that simple notion. I mean, it's like flipping a switch. It isn't like they have to change their habits. It isn't like they even have to wrap their head around it. It makes sense immediately. And then they get mad at themselves for allowing these thoughts to creep in and for allowing this pervert or this assailant or whoever to still affect them years later, even sometimes from the grave. Now, what you're coming along with is a more holistic viewpoint towards that. It isn't necessarily only applicable to someone who's hurt me, but any thought that's haunting me, anything that's ever happened, not even necessarily relationally, any of that junk in our mind, we can, first of all, we can be aware of, like you talked about so eloquently. Then we can believe we have power over it and zap it. And the next thing you know, we're really clearing house up there. I love it. What's the C?
The C is connection. Now, one of the things I learned at that meditation retreat was the idea that we're all connected. That's universal consciousness. We're all connected to each other. We don't feel it. We don't know it because of what we've done to our mind. We've thrown everything we hate, everything that scares us. And so that is all of that stuff. Let's just call it stuff. That's blocking us. I mean, your default mode is happiness. It is. But who the hell lives in happiness? Nobody lives in happiness. There's stress. There's anxiety. I mean, disease is dis-ease, not at ease. Stress and anxiety, it's like we're living in fight or flight mode right now. You used to walk out, back in the day, you walked out of a cave. There was a lion there. Okay, fight or flight mode comes into play. Am I going to run? Am I going to fight? Guess what? We're using fight or flight mode now for everything. What the boss thinks about us and what we're going to wear. And it's just everything. So we're constantly in stress. So the idea of connection, that we're all connected, is huge. But in this scenario, I'm talking about the connection you have to have with yourself. Most people, I would say almost all people, unless you meditate or something, they don't have a way of connecting with their inner self. So I want to say this. There is the two voices, like I said. You've got the lower voice that you've created. Then you've got that voice, the consciousness, the voice, the soul you. That's the real you. I mean, otherwise you would not know what the other voice is saying. You wouldn't know what you're dreaming about at night. You're the consciousness. You're not this lower voice that you've created that just talks and talks and talks and gives you bum advice and tells you how horrible you are. That's not you. So you're the one seeing that. There's two distinct things going on. The connection you have to have with yourself allows you to get to that place. And so what I tell people is this. I meditate every day twice. I do morning and afternoon. I do 45 minutes both times. Now, I tour the world and I'm all over the place all the time. My schedule is packed. I can tell you, if it didn't work, I wouldn't be doing it for 15 years every day. I get up at 1 a.m. if I have to make a 5 a.m. flight just to meditate. You have to do something where you're sitting alone and connecting to yourself. Nowadays, as soon as we're alone for 10 seconds, we're on our phone. Something else is happening. We have a to-do list inside of our mind. You have to sit, not move, and just do 5 minutes. You don't have to do 45. I do it because it changed my life so long ago and changes my life every day. And I do it because It's powerful. But I tell you, if you start with 5 minutes and you get up to 15 twice a day, that if that's your goal after say 6 months, it'll transform your life. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to go to a therapist. You go to a therapist, and how do you feel when you leave the therapist's office? You feel like crap because you just dredged up a bunch of stuff. And now you feel like crap for a few days, and almost you start getting better, and it's time to go back again next week. You don't have to do that. Meditation is a natural thing that actually things will release during meditation. You'll be crying a little bit. You won't know why. But next time something happens, you'll realize, wow, I didn't get affected by that. It's an amazing thing. They've been doing it since the beginning of time. It's in every religious text. They talk about it. But now life is so fast paced and it is so crazy that nobody thinks they have the time to do it. And you have to do it. If you get up 5 minutes early and take 5 minutes less on your lunch so you can do it, it will change everything, because the connection that you have with yourself is more important than anything else. The problem is we have two worlds going on at any time. You and I are sitting here, not in the same room. We're separated, which is amazing. Technology is amazing, but we're both in two worlds here. We've got our inner world, which is thoughts, ideas, emotions, all of that. Then there's the outer world, which is things and people and places and, seemingly solid objects. The problem is everyone thinks the outer world is the primary and that everything out there is what matters. It's the inner that nobody pays any attention to that is your power, your real power position. Because if I told you right now, I want you to go out and buy me a pound of love in the outer world, where are you going? Go get me some confidence, some courage, some inspiration. Where are you going for that stuff? They don't exist out there. But everybody thinks they do. I will be happy when I meet the right person. I get the smaller butt. I get the sports car. I will be. And then I'll tell you what, we've all done this. When you achieve that thing, how long were you happy before you needed the next thing? It doesn't work. It does not work when you put happiness in things or people or places. It doesn't work. What you have to do is realize happiness is an inner thing. It is something that you grant to yourself. It is the same thing as courage and everything else that are the most important things are inner things. You can't get them out there. The cars, the houses, that's all BS, because in the long run, they don't matter. And I found that firsthand. I got all that stuff in my 20s and thought it was going to make me happy my whole life. I grew up in the money hungry 80s when it was all about big money and, everyone was get rich. And I got all that and it didn't make me happy, because it's so fickle. As soon as you get what you think you want, the next thing appears that you want and you move on. And that's your entire life. You're on a hamster wheel your entire life chasing it. So by connecting to yourself, I tell people this: you sit 5 minutes in the morning. First thing you do, if you have to go to the bathroom, do that. But otherwise, you want to go right into it, because the moment when you wake up and the moment when you go to sleep, those are the moments when you're close to your subconscious. You're kind of in a gray area between being asleep, being awake. And all you do is sit in a chair, feet flat on the floor, hands on your knees, close your eyes, take a couple of breaths, and silently in your head, count 1 to 20 over and over again. That's all you got to do. Meditation is not some mystical thing. It's not some religious thing. It is a tool that you're going to use to get control of your mind. Why does it work, Mr. Brent? Here's why. First of all, you've given that lower mind a job, that bitchy roommate that comes talking in your head. You've given it a job. Count 1 to 20. The reason it's 20, if you go to 50 and you realize it, you've gone too far, immediately you go back to 1. You never try to figure out what number you were on, any of that. You don't try to figure out what the voice is talking about, why it's saying that. You don't get pulled into the emotion. All you do is go back to 1 immediately. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. The first week or two, it's going to be this. You're going to be counting silently in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. My arm is sore. My ass is tired. Why am I sitting here? That's what's going to happen. 1, 2, 3 in your mind. And same thing. What am I going to have for lunch today? Oh, I wonder what's playing at the movie. 1, 2. That's all you do. And in 5 minutes, you might have to do that 150 times. It doesn't matter how many times you do it, because what that is doing is it's giving your lower mind a job. So it's kind of caught up in that. You can transcend the mind. You're the consciousness. You can transcend it. But also what it's doing, it's creating unbelievable focus. This is how you work on your focus. How else do you do it? Nobody tells you how to do it. This is how. Every time you pull your focus back in your mind in meditation from whatever the thoughts are saying, 1, 2, that is building, not a muscle, but I call it a muscle, a focus muscle. You're creating that, you're building it, you're nurturing it. And now it starts to seep out into your life. You start to have much more focus in your life. You start to have much more control. Something starts to happen, like somebody that really bothers you. And, every time they come around, they pull you into drama, right? And it's, man, you start fighting, you're yelling, you're arguing. And some people, they can go 2 hours, a day, a week before they even realize they've been unconscious. So now when you do this, when you start to meditate, you start to count, you start to connect, that sort of thing will happen. And all of a sudden, like I said, everything gets slow. You're in the zone. And all you have to do, all you need is an extra 4 seconds. Because what you're going to do is ask yourself, is it worth my peace? 99.999% of the time, it's not. So that's all it takes, because those things that normally pulled you in will start to lose their grip on you. You will start to realize now, might be a week will go by and you'll go, wow, something happened last week that it happened before and it really, really made me upset. I didn't even think about it till just now that even happened. That's what happens. Your mind is a brilliant supercomputer. You're using 7% of its capacity. So when you start doing this, not only do you increase the capacity of the way your mind is working, but you also allow your mind to do things in the background. That's what's happening in meditation. You'll cry a little bit. You don't know, but you'll be releasing things from the past. Because like what you said, if you're dealing with somebody who assaulted you or something else and they're no longer alive, you're allowing them to continue the assault. Because that's what's happening.
That's right.
40 years later, 30 years later, 2 years, whatever it is, you are the one that's continuing. Now, I'm not blaming the victim at all, but you have to free yourself. And it's only you that can do it. So don't let this person torture you and abuse you for the rest of your life, because you are the only one that has any control. So meditation is a game changer. Those 3 things in order: become aware of what the voice is saying. You do the Post-it notes, you give it a name. It loses its power because it's like, oh my God, this is a bunch of crap. It's not logical. Then you start to, the belief starts to come back. We had it when we were kids. We could do anything. Remember when you were a kid, you could jump off of, you're jumping out of trees. You had no fear really. And then life starts to, I got to be afraid of this. Girls do this, boys do this. You can't do this, can't do that. That programming creates you as an adult. So you start to believe in yourself again. You start to, wow, maybe I can have this. Maybe I can do this. Maybe my dreams aren't off the shelf. Maybe I can meet that person. Maybe that just starts to creep in. Soon as you become aware, it loses its grip. The belief comes automatically. That's the great part of this. When you're connecting with yourself, the connection gets strong. But those 3 things work in tandem. You don't want to do them out of order. You want to start, don't meditate today or tomorrow. Spend a week doing what I said. Name the voice, do the Post-it notes, write it down, everything. Don't judge what you're writing. I want you to go back after 7 days and read that. You're going to see so much crap. The belief starts to come automatically. Then after maybe a week, so maybe 2 weeks in, start meditating. Do the 5 minutes. All you're doing is counting. And trust me, I've tried this different ways with different students, different people, with myself. This is the easiest way possible. You don't have to do any weird stuff. You don't have to meditate in a cave. You don't have to go to India. You don't have to buy a $2,000 course. You have this in you right now. You just have to flip the switch. Everything you need is free and in your soul right now, inside you. So using those 3 things in tandem, I promise you, you can't listen to us talk about it. You can't go watch videos on it and not do it, because it's one of those things that only will give you benefit, not rationalizing it and understanding it, because there really is no understanding it. I don't know exactly what's happening. There are questions bigger than us here. There is something that happens when you connect to that universal consciousness, whatever you believe in. If you can do it for a second, you'll never, ever give up trying to go back, because it's bliss. It's what we're supposed to feel like. It's like, you have that first kiss and all that energy comes up inside you. That energy's there, but you've been blocking it. Where does it come from? Right? That energy is in you. It's like maybe you have a fantastic girlfriend. She broke up with you. Now you're depressed. 2 weeks you've been without her. You can't get out of bed. You have no energy. You have pizza crusts everywhere. The house is a mess. You haven't showered. You look like crap. You have a full beard and everything. All of a sudden the phone rings. It's the girl. She says, I made a huge mistake. I love you so much. I don't know why I did this. Can I come see you? What happens right now? You jump out of that bed. Man, you clean that house, you jump in the shower, you shave. Where did that energy come from? A minute ago, you couldn't even get out of the bed. Where did that energy come from? It's in you, but you've blocked it with all of your crap. And now all of a sudden your blockages, it just aligns perfectly and comes bursting through. What if you start taking those blockages out of there? That energy is going to be flowing much cleaner, much higher in you. Because again, it's there ever since we're born. We just slowly tamp it out. We kind of put the spigot in, and then it takes big moments, like a sunset just blows your mind, right? It takes these huge moments. We start to think we have to deserve something. We have to do something to deserve this energy, and we don't. You just have to start looking in instead of trying to base your entire world on what's out there.
Yeah, everything you're talking about on the surface seems really metaphysical, but it's exactly the opposite. It's deep within us, but so much noise has drowned out the truth from our own consciousness that we really just have to go back into our minds and retrieve it. Several things come to mind as you're talking. So many of the examples you're bringing up are relational, and that's what this show's all about, is being a better man, getting better with women. The belief, the awareness of here's who I am, here's where I'd like to improve, here's where I'm BSing myself, leads to a belief in what you actually can do. A sober sense of self-judgment is what I usually call it. And then that connection with yourself reminds you that, if my father and my grandfather and every other male human being I've ever descended from back to cavemen was able to find a woman and make babies, why am I so special? Why am I any different? My wife and I were watching a show the other day called Younger on Netflix, where the female protagonist is 40 years old, but she's pretending to be 26 years old. And she goes in trying to get a job, the type of which is usually reserved for people in their 20s. And as it turns out, her would-be boss is about her age. And she asks her the interview question, what makes you so special? From the perspective of why should I hire you? And the answer that the woman, the main character in the show, gives her is brilliant. She said, well, I'm a grown-up. I stopped thinking I'm special. And the interviewer, her eyes just kind of light up and go, well, now that's interesting. So I think a lot of times we do get in our head so much, especially when we're younger, and we let all of this noise compound itself in our brains. And it is not helped at all by social media and Instagram and us comparing ourselves to influencers and, my goodness, the politics that are driven in our heads when most of what we're reading has no bearing on our lives whatsoever. And we just let it make us upset or make us feel happy. I mean, if one candidate wins or loses, our entire happiness hinges on it. It's crazy talk. And that crazy talk is self-talk. I have heard before, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard it from several unrelated sources, that there's strong evidence that children see the entire world quite literally different than we do, up to age 3 or 4, before it's all programmed out of us. And what I'm talking about here is they can see supernatural angels or whatever visually. What may be confused as an imaginary friend might not be so imaginary to this child's mind. And we block out all that stuff. We bury it as we get older so that we've, gotten to the point where we've just been subject to so much noise that we don't hear the truth anymore. Now, as this pertains to what guys care about the most who are listening to this particular show, how do we get over our fears of approaching, talking to, dating, and relating to women? Well, first of all, that one woman who rejected you, she's one woman. She's not the entire feminine gender, okay? Anything that's ever happened that was negative, you need to get that out of your brain and start thinking about those times that actually worked out pretty well. We love to dwell on the disasters rather than remembering the good times. And similarly, if we believe that a conversation with a woman is going to go poorly, or we dread it, or we fear it, right? That woman's going to feed off our energy, and she's going to dread us and fear us. And meanwhile, the conversation with someone you're actually getting along with should flow naturally. Like you and I are having a conversation that flows naturally, Brent, and I don't have to sit here and worry, oh my goodness, if I say the wrong thing, is Brent, this mentalist, going to read my mind and realize how insecure and how horrible I am? It reminds me of the conversations I have with people who are psychologists and psychiatrists out there trying to date, right? They just scare the bejeebers out of people across the table from them.
Right.
But I'm over myself, so I figure you probably are too. You got your own stuff, you have your own mind, you have everything you're considering and everything that's important to you. And in many ways, instead of worrying about what I'm going to say, I need to sit and listen to you and learn about you. And then if we get along, great. If we don't, well, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and stew over what a jerk you are and go talk badly about you to someone else, because you know what? That's just going to bring me down too. So the next thing you know, once you clear your head of all this junk, you're talking to women like, well, imagine this, they're human and there's either going to be a possibility with them or not. And really your demeanor is going to reflect and be projected back upon you by these women you're talking to, because here's the mic drop. They probably haven't done the exercises and achieved what you're recommending in this podcast either, because like you said, 99% of people haven't. So it's us helping them to be aware, to believe, and to connect. And the next thing you know, women love you for it because you've done the heavy lifting. And I'm not even sure it's heavy lifting. I mean, you're talking about pacing yourself with the idea of meditation and so forth. And I think that's great. But we're not talking about years and years and years of digging out, mucking out our brains. This is something that once we achieve this awareness, the rest is going to kind of slide into place. So I love what you're saying. I think it's fantastic. And I think couples, gentlemen, if you're listening to this and you're in a relationship with a woman, share this podcast with her and go through this journey together. Is that a good idea, Brent?
Well, of course. And it's also important to remember, to be a little more metaphysical, you're manifesting your life. I mean, your thoughts are creating your life. That's why most of the people feel like they're in the past, because it's the same crap all the time. Well, you're bringing yesterday into today. If you go to bed at night thinking about all the stuff that happened today that was horrible and all the crap you have to do tomorrow, guess what? You're going to marinate on that all night long. You're going to wake up and you're going to be just continuing
Miserable.
the same day.
Yes.
So you're manifesting your life. And so, I mean, negative people that are so negative. And then I have an aunt who's like that. Everything is negative. She's always sick. And it's like she went through the car wash. Somehow the window came down and the car got filled with soap. And I'm like, who does that ever? I've never heard that ever happening to anybody. I could totally see it happening to her, because you do. When you're negative, you feeding on it, you're bringing it to you, because it's all you're seeing. It's all you're feeling. It's all you're looking for. It's all you're expecting. And so you're going to get it in spades. You're going to get it.
I know at least a dozen people who fit the description of what you're talking about. And not only do bad things keep happening to these people, like Schleprock from the Flintstones or something, it's the same pattern of bad things. Like their kids always get sick, or I'm getting sued by someone, or this woman did something terrible and cheated on me, or, my boss yelled at me. And I mean, a lack of self-awareness would be the first place to investigate there. But, it's amazing how many people will play the blame game and sometimes even kind of tree hug the unfortunate nature of their life as if it's normal and it's what they're used to. It's the habit that they've adopted. They don't even really have to be borderline personality disorder sufferers or anything like that. They've just fallen into this trap of letting all the junk in their brain control it. But it is indeed amazing how so many people fall into the same exact pattern of misfortune or bad luck, quote unquote. And it's not luck at all. I think you're onto something there, and I think it's powerful. And it really is. It's all about all this noise. Well, we're out of time. But I do want to give you a chance to sort of give these guys some practical steps that they can take with them that can help them kind of jump off the springboard here and wrap their head around what you've talked about today and get going.
The easiest thing, if you want to start wherever you are right now, and again, it doesn't matter how old you are, what you look like, anything. It has to do with, do you want to finally get control of your mind? So you start looking at little things. Don't worry about the big stuff. It'll pop up later. But, start taking control of the little things. Michael Singer, the author, always talks about, you're in traffic, if the car in front of you is driving slow. What are you doing back there? You're yelling, or, oh my God, what are you doing? Why are you driving? Right? This person's up there driving completely oblivious. You're back there having a stroke about the way they're driving. Let it go. You just relax a little bit. Little easy things like that. It's raining on your day off. You're going on a picnic and now you're upset. God hates me. The universe is against me. Why does this always happen to me? Let it go. That's a little tiny thing. But the more you do that, it makes room for those big things that come popping up. Again, don't take this advice lightly, because this is from 25, 30 years of experience with thousands of people. I can tell you we all have it. Maybe different stuff, but we've all packed our stuff away. And so by doing the little things, don't worry about the big things. Don't worry about what mommy did to you, and don't worry about, your first wife and all of that. You worry about just the little things, because that little bit of energy, every time you do that. And I work with sports teams, the Cleveland Browns, and I do these events. They have sports psychologists that like teaches them to play the games in their mind, and runners run in their mind. Your mind is powerful. I mean, it doesn't even know whether it's doing something or thinking about it. That's how powerful it is. We just don't know how to use it. So if you let
the Cleveland Browns need all the help they can get.
Yeah, that's what somebody just told me. I haven't done them this year, so I won't take any blame. But you do the little things, the big things will come up when they need to later. But just by doing the little things, and you're pulling your focus back while you're meditating, you're letting go of the tiny things, and you're going to realize, wow, didn't upset me. Because what happens? If the guy in front of you is driving slow, you talk about it all day. Oh my God, this a-hole, and he's driving slow in front of me, right? You
right.
Keep that going all day long. So by letting the little things go, there's room now, a little more room for the big things to come up. And when they do start to come up, don't push them back down. It's not going to, you can't do it in one try. I mean, anything you stored with discomfort is coming back up with discomfort. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Very few pet peeves are life altering, are they?
No, and they were all made when you weren't mature, when you weren't logical. So you were a kid. So why are you? You are now living. Most of the time you're living with a tape. It's like the first 8 years of your life. You've got a tape recorder in your head, recording everything you do, everything you see, everything you hate. The one day about 9, the tape stops. Now that's the tape that's going to run for the rest of your life when you're on autopilot. 90%.
And that sounds so unfair. It's just crazy.
I think it'd be more unfair if nobody ever told you that that's what was happening. It's like you're born into a tunnel and you just fall out when you die. You don't see, wow, you're in this amazing world. You're in this, this tube. So yeah, there is so much that you have inside you that just needs to unlock. And man, no matter where you're listening from today, you can do this.
His name is Brent Webb, and he is the mind power expert. And when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/web, WEBB, okay, you're going to find all of Brent Webb's highlight reels, all of his testimonials from like A-list celebrities and presidents. It's just madness. This guy goes all over the world, and he's beloved everywhere he goes. Why? Because he speaks the truth, and he changes minds in ways that you've never heard before. I mean, admit it. I mean, I am a better man for having hosted this podcast today. And certainly, Brent, I think these guys are probably feeling the same, having listened as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brent Webb. And man, I sure hope you'll come back on when you're back home on hiatus again, having traveled the world and done cruises and stuff. Just great stuff. Thank you, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, go there and download my free book, Sticking Point Solved. What I've done is I've taken emails from you guys, and they cover almost every area of struggle with women that most normal red-blooded men face, and I provided logical, rational, practical answers to all of them. That book is free of charge when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com. And while you're at mountaintoppodcast.com, please be sure to visit our sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, also Hero Soap, and the Keyport. When you use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10, you'll get an additional 10% off when you partake of anything from our 3 wonderful longtime sponsors. All of that and so much more, actually, is there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.